Welcome to the deep dive. I think everyone listening right now has experienced this moment. It's pure agonizing frustration, right?
Oh, definitely.
You need that one thing, maybe the presentation to load or the flight booking to finally confirm or, that critical game server connection. You need it to work perfectly. And that is precisely the moment it decides to just, well, combust or crash or simply stop cooperating altogether.
It's that universal feeling, isn't it? That Murphy's Law isn't just some random principle about, engineering odds going wrong. It feels deeply, almost painfully personal.
Exactly. It feels like the universe has specifically targeted you for failure right at the worst possible moment, like with actual malicious intent.
Yeah, like it's got it in for you.
So why? Why does the screw break or the internet crash or the game stutter exactly when we need things to run smoothly? We kind of put that question out there, and our listeners shared, well, a whole stack of sources looking at this from wildly different angles.
Yeah, we got some fascinating material for this deep dive. It really forces us to move beyond just, complaining about bad luck.
Right.
These sources, they tackle this whole problem through, well, speculative philosophy, some deep cognitive psychology, and even really detailed technical teardowns of system failures.
Okay.
So our mission today is really to try and extract the logical bits, the psychological drivers, and the technical nuggets that explain this frustrating, but let's face it, universal phenomenon.
I want to understand the mechanics of chaos, basically.
Exactly. See if we can maybe manage it a bit better.
Okay, let's unpack this. I really want to know if the universe is playing some kind of cruel joke or if there's actually a science to bad luck, like maybe a predictive model for failure.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Let's start with the fun stuff, maybe. The wilder theories the listener shared before we land on the cold, hard, sober reality of it all.
Okay, so if we're going to talk about that feeling, that sense of being personally targeted, we kind of have to acknowledge some of the more, let's say, outlandish theories that popped up in the source material.
Right, because they really capture that feeling, don't they?
They do. They articulate that feeling of cosmic targeting really well.
Okay, so first up, there's this idea of parallel worlds. It's kind of based on a quantum mechanics thought experiment, right?
The idea that every decision, every tiny event, splits the universe.
So in one world, the last screw breaks. In another, it tightens perfectly. And the really frustrating part of this theory is that we, the ones feeling the stress, we only ever seem to land in the chaos version.
Yeah, that version suggests we're basically stuck in this perpetual cosmic trap. The logic being the good version of you, the one where everything worked out. You're just relaxing, maybe eating popcorn, succeeding effortlessly.
While we're left dealing with the fallout in this perpetually malfunctioning reality.
Right. It's definitely an entertaining way to rationalize, the absurdity of life sometimes. Suggests we're stuck in a universe fundamentally rigged against us.
Okay, what was the other speculative idea? The one about Murphy's Law being like a personal coach.
Ah, yes. It's almost like seeing it not as a law of nature, but as a sort of hidden game mechanic, like a game designer setting conditions.
Like a little voice whispering, hey, Neo, stop pressing so hard or something's going to break.
Kind of, yeah. The idea is that failure isn't punishment, but maybe a built-in teaching mechanism designed to guide us away from, say, unsustainable stress levels or repeating mistakes.
That failure is actually a correction, not just bad luck.
It's an interesting philosophical jump, for sure. But as fascinating as that thought experiment is, we probably need to bring it back down to earth, back to a clear-eyed view of how we humans interact with probability.
Right. We need what the sources call the sober assessment.
Exactly. The nüchterne Betrachtung, what's actually happening.
And what's fascinating here, according to that assessment, is that nothing is happening because of you, not in a malicious cosmic sense anyway.
Precisely. It's simply probability in action. But, and this is crucial, it's viewed through a really flawed and biased lens.
Okay, tell me more about that, the biased lens part.
We absolutely need to talk about memory bias. Think about just the mundane stuff in your life, okay?
Okay.
You probably drive to work successfully, 250 days a year. Your computer boots up correctly thousands of times. Most journeys, most tasks, they're punctual, they're successful.
Yeah, that happened.
But here's the key. You don't notice them. They just fade into the background noise of competence. Why? Because they lack any real emotional charge.
They're the default state, so we just stop registering them. Success is expected. It's not really an event.
Correct, but that one time the navigation system crashes, or you hit that massive delay and miss a critical flight. That single event is emotionally charged. It creates anger, frustration, maybe even panic. And that emotional intensity makes the event far, far more memorable. It burns a much stronger path in your brain.
So it's like the exception that proves the rule we invent in our heads. If 99 times out of 100 the internet works fine, we subconsciously just discard those 99 successful times. And we only remember the 100th time when the meeting collapsed because the connection dropped. And we assign this huge cosmic significance to what was really just a statistical outlier because of the pain it cost us.
And this is exactly where the human condition really enters the equation. This failure bias, this tendency to remember the bad stuff, leads directly to the crucial role of stress. When we're stressed or hurried or maybe already running on a sleep deficit, our cognitive functions, even our physical ones, they suffer dramatically. The sources are really clear on this. Stress doesn't just make us unhappy. It makes us, as humans, radically more susceptible to making errors.
So, if I'm understanding this right, let's say that frustrating statistical outlier happens, the internet crashes again. If I happen to be relaxed, well-rested, I probably handle it okay, maybe find a workaround.
Yeah, you cope better.
But if I'm already under intense pressure, big deadline, boss watching that same small failure combines with my already reduced capacity, and suddenly it feels like this massive catastrophe orchestrated by the universe itself.
Exactly. It's not cosmos or karma or some personal cosmic torture device aimed just at you. It's more like the constant tension of Mensch gegen Welt, man versus circumstance.
And sometimes,
when the person is already running on fumes, maybe operating at only 70% capacity, they lose that immediate battle. Why? Because their ability to absorb and manage those unexpected variables is just critically reduced.
So you notice failure more when you're tired.
And crucially, you're also more likely to cause minor failures yourself when you're tired or stressed.
Wow. Okay, that really lays the foundation. We aren't cursed. We're just wired to notice the moments when random chance probability aligns perfectly with our own physiological state of fatigue and being prone to error.
We forget the hundreds of successes and we fixate on the one failure that was painful. That's the core of it.
Okay, so moving on from those single isolated errors, what really drives people crazy, I think, is the clustering. It feels like it's never just one thing that goes wrong. It's a wave.
The classic comes in threes.
Exactly. The observation is that problems rarely seem to come alone. They arrive in clusters, maybe 3 or more, all at once. Why does the world seem to throw a whole pile of bricks at you instead of just one?
Yeah, that raises a really important question. Is this clustering just pure random chance hitting you multiple times? Or is there actually a mechanism behind it, something built by the interplay of circumstances and our own psychology?
And the sources lean towards.
They argue pretty strongly for the latter. The clustering usually isn't just random chance. It's often a buildup based on, resource depletion, both mental and sometimes physical resources.
Okay, let's break down that fatigue mechanism. It sounds almost like a psychological domino effect that we kind of inadvertently set off ourselves because we don't properly process that first failure.
That's a good way to put it. It often follows a clear 3-step psychological cascade. Let's just imagine a typical stressful morning.
Okay, I'm bracing myself.
So problem 1 hits you. Let's say you missed your usual train connection. Why? Maybe a last-minute alarm clock fail. Okay.
That happens.
This first problem, it immediately makes you tired, or at least more rushed. It raises your basal stress level, and it fundamentally alters your schedule for the day. Your psychological capacity, let's say, drops from 100% down to maybe 80%.
Right. I'm already mentally running a deficit. I'm playing catch up. Probably skipped breakfast, maybe forgot to send that crucial email before rushing out the door because of the train.
Precisely. Then comes problem 2. Now, this second problem often surfaces because you're not fully present. You're operating with reduced mental bandwidth, thanks to problem 1.
Like what?
For instance, because you rushed out the door due to the missed train, you absent-mindedly left your work security badge sitting on the kitchen counter. Or maybe because you're still mentally replaying the morning's failure, you make a typo in a quick text message to your boss, creating some small, annoying misunderstanding.
Okay, so the second failure isn't just more independent bad luck hitting me. It's actually a consequence of the reduced mental resources caused by the first failure.
Absolutely. The first problem depleted your capacity to handle even routine tasks correctly. So now you've been hit twice. Your emotional state is probably getting pretty frayed.
Definitely irritated, frustrated, maybe even a bit panicked, possibly hungry because I skipped lunch trying to catch up.
Right. Your capacity now, maybe it's down to 50%.
And this, I'm guessing, leads directly to the most destructive phase. Problem 3, the reaction.
Exactly. Because of all that accumulated stress and fatigue from the first two problems, you react, maybe irritably, maybe hastily. And that reaction leads to a new, often entirely self-inflicted error that compounds the whole situation dramatically.
And this isn't usually another technical glitch, is it? It's more personal.
Often, yes. It's relational or physical. It's about how you interact with the world or other people when you're compromised.
Can you give me a concrete example of that problem 3 reaction, one that really shows that internal domino effect playing out?
Okay, sure. Let's stick with the lost badge scenario. Problem 2 was leaving the badge at home. Now you're late, you're starving, maybe stressed about the boss's text message. You get to work and you run into a conflict with the security guard who, quite rightly, won't let you in without proper ID.
Right. Standard procedure.
Normally, you'd calmly call your supervisor, get it sorted. But today, your frustration boils over. Instead of handling it calmly, you lash out. Maybe a rash, angry comment to the guard. That comment, that reaction, that's problem 3. It creates maybe relational damage, maybe gets you reported. It's a self-inflicted wound that likely wouldn't have occurred if you'd walked in with 100% mental capacity and low stress. You effectively created new chaos because your internal system was overloaded.
Wow. So the cascade effect, it's fundamentally about our emotional and cognitive solvency, I guess, like how much capacity we have left. The initial trigger might be external, bad luck even.
Could be.
But the subsequent failures are often direct consequences of our inability to maintain composure and focus after our resources get depleted by that first hit.
That's the core synthesis from the sources, yeah. Life doesn't really run in single, isolated steps. It runs in these resource-dependent waves. And the practical advice that comes out of this observation is, well, simple on paper, but incredibly hard to do when you're actually in the moment.
Which is?
You have to try and recognize the cascade early, interrupt the momentum. The advice boils down to breathe, solve problem 1 calmly, stabilize your resources, mentally regroup, then address problem 2.
It's about stopping that destructive momentum before your own reduced mental bandwidth triggers the next, possibly bigger, failure. That feels like a really powerful way to think about regaining control when chaos seems totally overwhelming.
It reframes it, doesn't it? It transforms bad luck into potentially poor resource management under pressure.
Okay, let's pivot now to the deep psychological tension that seems to be at the heart of this whole thing. This links back to that concept of pressure we touched on.
Right.
Why does something go wrong precisely when you are fixated on it not going wrong? This feels like the absolute core conflict when we talk about intense need.
Yes, that word need or want, it implies such intense pressure, doesn't it?
Totally. If the outcome doesn't really matter that much, my performance is generally pretty smooth. But the second success becomes critical. Suddenly my hands feel heavy or clumsy, my mind races, and I just invariably mess up the simple stuff.
You essentially enter a state of self-sabotage. It's often referred to in the sources using terms like the attention bias or maybe the cognitive spotlight effect.
Right.
It's the paradox of trying too hard. You see it all the time in sports, right? An athlete misses a really simple free throw precisely because they're so intensely aware of the consequences of missing it.
So even though we're aiming for success, we're actually giving mental space, cognitive real estate, to the concept of failure itself. How does that work? How does that internal mechanism actually operate?
Well, think about a routine task. Something like walking or driving a familiar route or typing a simple email you've sent 100 times.
Okay, muscle memory stuff.
Exactly. It's handled mostly by your procedural memory, your subconscious. It's an automatic fluid process. It just flows. But the moment you introduce the thought, I absolutely must not make a mistake here, your cognitive spotlight shifts dramatically.
How so?
You effectively yank the execution process out of the efficient automatic subconscious, and you force it into the clumsy, high-tension conscious mind.
So I'm basically trying to micromanage a process that actually runs best on autopilot.
That's a perfect way to describe it. And that focused conscious monitoring, it has profound physiological effects. When you're constantly thinking about not failing, your body literally tenses up.
You can feel it sometimes, shoulders up by your ears.
Right. Your adrenaline spikes even if subtly. Your perception narrows. There's a phenomenon called cognitive tunnel vision. Every little disturbance, a slight noise in the background, a fleeting negative thought, It's no longer just background noise. It gets amplified. It becomes a catastrophic sign of impending failure in your mind.
This sounds exactly like that bad magic analogy that was mentioned in the source material. The idea that by wishing intensely, please, please, no red light, my subconscious brain actually hears and focuses on the strongest, most emphasized words, red light.
That's a perfect illustration of the mechanism. Your nervous system, in a way, registers the negative outcome you're desperately trying to avoid most clearly because that's where the emotional energy is focused.
And the result?
The result is that the fear of the error generates physical tension and cognitive distraction. And that combination makes your subconscious, the part that usually handles smooth execution, more likely to actually bring the error about. You literally become clumsy. You might click the mouse too fast. You rush the input. You fumble.
That is genuinely unsettling. The idea that we are effectively engineering our own failures just through intense negative focus. The fixation on avoiding the failure is the very thing that introduces the instability needed to cause the failure.
And here's the really broad implication. This isn't some external force messing with you. It's an internal processing loop that's gone awry. Your intense focus on avoiding the wrong thing disrupts the natural, automatic, relaxed flow that usually executes the task correctly.
You swap efficient subconscious action for clumsy, high-tension conscious monitoring.
Exactly, and this is particularly destructive in tasks that are fast-paced or require fine motor skills. Think about surgery, or playing a musical instrument, or even high-stakes gaming. The physical cost of that internal pressure, the muscle rigidity, the shallow breathing, that's often what precipitates the final observable mistake.
It really seems like the antidote to this kind of bad luck isn't trying harder, is it? It's almost paradoxically relaxing, stepping back from the intense need for that specific outcome.
That seems to be a key insight, yes. Managing the internal pressure is as important, if not more so, than managing the external task itself. Okay, so now let's try and apply some of this psychological insight and combine it with the technical side by looking at the listener's specific, really frustrating scenario, live streaming or gaming. The phenomenon of performance anxiety mixed with sudden technical failure.
It's the classic four-fear effect, as it's sometimes called. Everything runs perfectly fine until your friends start watching your stream, and then, bam! The game stutters, the server lags, errors pop up everywhere.
This is a perfect case study for us, actually, because it lets us rigorously try to separate the human element, the pressure, from the technical element, the machine. And then we can see exactly where they collide to produce that feeling of inevitable failure.
Right. And the immediate sort of surface-level explanation people jump to is always human error, isn't it?
Usually, yeah.
Pressure from the viewers, the adrenaline makes your fingers heavy, you're trying too hard to look good, and boom, you miss the jump or make a stupid mistake in the game.
And look, that's partially true. The source material definitely acknowledges that pressure causes physical tension, cognitive mistakes, just like we discussed.
What?
But it's often only half the story, especially when we're talking about fundamental technical glitches, things like server lag, frame rate drops, actual system instability. That's where we need to bring in the concept of technical overload, or what the sources sometimes call tech collision.
Okay.
This is the crucial, really detailed part for understanding a lot of modern computing failures, especially under load.
All right, let's treat the computer itself like a stressed entity for a minute. What actually happens technically when I hit that go live button on my stream?
Okay, think of it as an instant and massive spike in resource demand on your system. When you launch that extra piece of software, OBS, Streamlabs, whatever you use, that program suddenly becomes a resource monster. It has to perform several incredibly demanding tasks all at the same time. It's filming your screen activity, right? Then it has to compress that raw video data into a manageable format that's called encoding, and it's very processor intensive.
Okay.
And then it has to constantly upload that large compressed stream of data to the streaming service like Twitch or YouTube.
So straight away, that needs significant CPU power for the compression, a chunk of RAM to hold the data buffers while it works, and critically, it starts eating up a massive continuous flow of your internet upload bandwidth.
Exactly. Now, meanwhile, the game itself is demanding its own huge set of resources. It wants full GPU power to render the graphics smoothly. It needs stable processing power for the game logic, physics, AI, whatever. And, crucially, it needs a clean, low-latency internet connection to the game server for multiplayer.
So now the game and the stream are suddenly forced to share the same finite pool of resources, CPU, RAM, bandwidth.
Precisely. And this creates ruthless competition between the two applications.
Okay, I really need to understand this competition, especially at the network level, because we're talking about two fundamentally different types of network needs battling for the same internet connection, aren't we?
That's a perfect way to frame it. Let's distinguish between two critical network concepts here: latency and throughput.
Okay, latency first.
The game needs low latency. Latency is basically the round-trip time. How fast does a tiny packet of data, like I just press the jump button, travel from your PC to the game server and back again? Online games prioritize incredibly fast response times. Think of game data like a tiny, super fast speedboat on the water. It needs to get there now.
Makes sense. Quick reactions are everything. And the stream, what does it need?
The stream prioritizes high throughput. Throughput is about the sheer volume of data you can shove through the pipe every second. The stream doesn't need microsecond responses as much, but it needs to constantly push massive flows of data to maintain decent video quality for the viewers.
So the stream is less like a speedboat, more like...
Think of the stream like a wide, slow-moving river, just constantly flowing with a huge volume of water, or data in this case.
Okay, speedboat versus river. Got it. So how does my router, the traffic cop for my home network, decide who wins this competition when both are demanding resources at the same time? This must be the prioritization problem the sources mentioned.
Exactly. Most home routers are designed primarily for efficiency and handling bulk data transfers smoothly. When faced with the stream's constant high-volume demand for upload bandwidth, the router often defaults to prioritizing that high-throughput task.
Why? To keep the video feed from breaking up.
Pretty much. It tries to ensure the massive stream upload continues steadily so the video doesn't buffer or drop for the viewers. But in prioritizing that steady, high-bandwidth stream, it can inadvertently starve the connection needed by the game, the one that relies on low latency. The stream might be uploading successfully, looking great for your viewers, but those tiny, critical game packets, they get delayed. They end up waiting in the queue behind the big chunks of video data being uploaded.
And that delay is what explains the feeling of lag. The frame skipping, the stuttering effect in the game that makes it feel unresponsive. The game packets are literally taking too long to get there and back because the stream is hogging the line.
That's a very common reason why the game performance suffers specifically when the stream starts. And the sources mention other physical issues too that can contribute.
Like what?
Well, running a modern, graphically demanding game and a compression-heavy streaming program at the same time generates enormous amounts of heat inside your computer case.
Yeah, you can often feel the machine getting hot.
Right. The computer might actually overheat. And this can lead to something engineers call thermal throttling.
Throttling?
Yeah, the processor, the CPU, or sometimes the GPU literally slows itself down automatically. It reduces its own clock speed as a self-preservation mechanism to avoid physically burning up.
So the processor effectively tips over or throttles its own performance because of the immense simultaneous load from both the game and the stream encoder. And that results in general performance degradation, lag, stutter, regardless of what the network is doing.
Exactly. The computer itself gets stressed out, just like the human operating it. The whole system is running hot, both physically with heat and computationally with resource contention. And maybe the final, really compelling piece of evidence that supports this tech overload theory. It's the common experience the listener probably has the moment the viewer leaves or you stop the stream.
Everything instantly goes back to normal.
Right. Resources are immediately freed up, the CPU load drops, the network contention disappears, the thermal load decreases, and stability just instantly returns. It's often a verifiable, predictable issue of resource scarcity, not just some spooky cosmic bad luck tied to being watched.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense technically, but let's just bring the human factor back in for 1 second. We can't entirely dismiss it, right? Doesn't the human element, the pressure, still amplify the system strain, even if the core problem is technical?
Oh, absolutely. It's not either. The nervous human definitely amplifies the problem, sometimes exponentially. We mentioned muscle tension and clumsy inputs earlier, right?
Yeah.
And when you feel that very first micro stutter from the tech collision, because you're already experiencing performance anxiety about being watched, you might panic internally. That internal panic often leads you to try and compensate by inputting commands even faster, clicking harder, maybe frantically switching programs to see what's wrong. These nervous, rapid actions further increase the strain on the already struggling system, making the stuttering even worse.
So it becomes a vicious cycle. The technical failure validates the human fear,
which then causes human actions that exacerbate the technical failure. It's a classic negative feedback loop.
The fear of failure causes me to hit buttons too fast, which strains the system already struggling with the stream game collision, which causes more visible lag, which then totally justifies my initial fear.
Wow. It really is self-made chaos in a way.
So this has been a pretty deep dive, hasn't it, into why our expectations, especially under pressure, so often seem to fail us. Let's try and tie all these threads together into a succinct summary.
Okay.
We've essentially established three major pillars that contribute to this feeling of things going wrong when you least need them to. There's probability and our own cognitive biases, especially memory bias.
Right, remembering the failures more than the successes. Then there's compounding stress, that cascade effect where one problem leads to resource depletion, making the next problem more likely.
The dominoes.
And finally, especially in modern contexts, there's technical or mental overload, like we just discussed with the streaming example, often amplified by performance pressure.
So if we had to distill the absolute key lesson from all this source material, the core understanding, it seems to relate entirely back to that intense fixation on success, doesn't
I
it?
think that's right. The ultimate takeaway seems to be that when you fixate really intensely on things working flawlessly, you paradoxically reduce the resilience of your own nervous system. You make it thinner, more fragile, as one source put it.
Nervenkostümdünner.
Precisely. And that reduced resilience, that thinner nerve costume, triggers the physiological response we instinctively associate with pressure. Stress hormones start pumping.
Heart races, breath gets shallow.
Coordination suffers. Your internal systems are running hot. And often, your technical systems are also running hot, operating at their peak, maybe unsustainable load, because you're pushing them hard.
And because you're hyper-focused on avoiding the negative outcome.
You notice the absolute smallest problems much faster. You panic faster. And that panic itself often creates new, secondary, totally self-inflicted errors.
So the big conclusion seems pretty clear then. Fixation creates pressure, and pressure creates chaos. And that chaos is often, as the source material strongly suggests, largely self-made. It's the anxiety about the outcome, not the cosmos itself, that introduces the critical instability into the system.
And realizing that is critical, I think, because it puts some measure of control back in your hands, doesn't it? We often want to attribute the failure entirely to external forces, the bad server, the faulty screw, the slow internet.
Yeah, blame something else.
When in reality, our own desperate need for success can introduce the very conditions system, overload, cognitive impairment, physical stress that make failure much more likely, maybe even inevitable. You end up pushing the system, whether it's internal or external, past its reasonable operational capacity.
Okay, but luckily, the sources didn't just diagnose the problem. They also offered some actionable steps, right? Based on this analysis, for both the technical side and the mental game.
That's right. For the technical user, the gamer or streamer in our case study, it's really about managing that resource stress proactively before the pressure hits.
Like what specifically?
Well, next time, maybe try deliberately relaxing before you go live. Consciously lower the stream resolution or bitrate significantly. That reduces the encoding load on your CPU and the bandwidth demand. Or maybe run a full test round without any viewers first, just to isolate and diagnose any underlying technical bottlenecks before you add the performance anxiety factor into the mix.
So manage the system stress before you add your own emotional variable. Make this.
And for the more general frustration, the cascade effect we talked about, it's about consciously trying to break that cycle. Solve problem one calmly, take a breath, regroup mentally before diving into problem two. Don't let the fatigue just compound unchecked.
It really boils down to resource management, doesn't it? Both on your computer and, well, inside your own head.
Exactly. Recognizing that the second and third failures might just be your brain running on empty after the first hit. That awareness alone is half the battle. Hashtag tag outro.
You know, this whole deep dive, it connects back perfectly to why we started this whole conversation. Understanding why seemingly simple situations seem to break down at the absolute worst possible time.
And the answer isn't really about being fundamentally unlucky. It's more about physics and psychology colliding under the immense weight of expectation.
So managing those resources, both the system resources on your machine and your own mental and emotional resources, that seems to be the key to surviving these stressful moments with a bit more grace, maybe.
I think so. And understanding that attention bias, realizing how focusing on not failing can backfire, that allows you to maybe consciously deprioritize the fear of failure itself.
Which in turn, hopefully, reduces some of that self-inflicted chaos.
Okay, so here's something perhaps for you, the listener, to explore next. Something built on the foundations we've covered today. We focused pretty intensely on the negative cycle, right? Fixation leads to pressure, leads to chaos.
Yeah.
So the question is, if expectation and the intense need for success seem to accelerate failure, what happens if you invert that focus?
What do you mean?
What does detached, relaxed focus actually do to performance? If you consciously try to let go of the intense need for a specific, perfect outcome and instead focus purely on the process, on the execution itself, could that quiet-centered state actually accelerate success?
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Could letting go of the need for the outcome actually improve the outcome?
That's a powerful thought to maybe chew on next time you feel that pressure building, the server starting to lag, or that critical moment arriving. Can performance truly flourish only when the outcome itself ceases to be the absolute driving goal?
Definitely some food for thought there. Well, thank you for joining us for the deep dive.